Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of Nutanix Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got Harvey Green with me. Harvey's on time. Check it out. Harvey, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Now, yeah, I heard you just joking about having to go to Buffalo tonight, tomorrow. When you leaving?
Tonight, when I get off this podcast, I am driving to the airport.
Well, that's good. You don't live too far from the airport, do you?
No, not too far.
Hopefully it's not too busy. And, of course, we got our main guest here, Jaira Cox. Jaira, how's it going?
Hey, man, am I still a guest? I'm a regular.
That's true.
That's true. You're just another co-host, I guess. So I usually start the podcast out making a joke, and usually it's at Jaira's expense, and I'm going to do it right now. So I apologize ahead of time.
Nice.
You know, we made fun of him the other week, and I said I wouldn't do it anymore. But listen to the podcast in the shower. So I do listen to the news in the shower. And I actually did find myself listening to a podcast the other day because I had to get up and go to work, but I couldn't stop listening, so I listened to it in the shower. So there you go. Of course, it was like a true crime drama one. It wasn't technology podcast.
Do you feel like you were able to internalize it at like a lower level? Did it stick with you more?
No, not really. I just got to get to the end of it without. By the time I was done shaving and heading out the door, I got to the end. It was. I couldn't just stop. I woke up early and started listening, and then I wanted to finish it before I left to go to work.
I totally get it.
My joke this time is I've been waiting for weeks to talk about database modernization and what Nutanix is doing here, and I really do. I'm saying that jokingly because I think I am going to find that the topic here is something that does make a lot of sense and is exciting. It's just I may have told you guys this before. I don't know which podcast I said this on before, but I took one in my MCSE NT4 track. I took one SQL class, and that was the worst 5 days of my life. It's just not – database administration is not my thing.
I get it, man. I'm with you there, right? I'm by no means a DBA at heart by any means. I've done as little database administration in my career as I've been able to avoid so far.
You know, every once in a while you find yourself in this kind of advanced spreadsheet and you're like, oh, this is cool. And this relates to this and this pulls this. And you're like, oh man, maybe I am a database guy. And then in the reality, it's just Excel.
Remember back, I mean, this is, I don't know, 10 years ago, used to be like for a new vCenter stand-up, you pretty much, if you wanted SQL to be anywhere off that VM, it was like, you're going to figure out how to make this talk to an external SQL box.
Right. Did you ever felt like after you did that you actually did it right? Like you knew it was 100% right, or you're like, oh, I don't know if this is right or not, but it works. We'll go with it.
It was right if it starts up, right? It's right if it powers on.
Yeah, you get that OBC connector and OBDC connector and it hooks up to it, and you're like, I don't know if I got too much rights or what have you, but it's working and it's right, and so I'm happy.
Yeah, that's true, right? You knew you had it in the wrong recovery model if in a couple of weeks it just fell over and you're like, why is it out of disk space?
Yeah.
Every DBA is like rolling their eyes at us right now.
All right. Yeah. They're probably not listening to this podcast anyway. Well, hopefully they are when they find out what Nutanix are doing. So, Jaira, we had 2 links in the invite. One's kind of a blog and one's kind of a reference to maybe the different options of what you can buy. So let's talk about the blog. The name of the blog is Introducing a New Era in Database Management, written by Jennifer and Chris Pop, P-A-A-P. And I didn't even try to pronounce her. Lanier, Jeremy Lanier. Oh, I called Jeremy Jennifer. That's even worse. Oh, it's been that kind of day. Jaira, do you have that blog up?
I do.
Yeah. So help us with the first section here. It's an announcement section. What's that announcing?
So this was announcing a new release of Era, a major one, 2.0, brought in a ton of new capabilities to the product. And this one highlights primarily the multi-cloud release of it, right? So with 2.0, Era went multi-cluster. Maybe we should back up a little bit and set the stage for that. So Era is our database automation platform for running databases on Nutanix. That lets, just the same way we've solved for traditional infrastructure admins to get more time back in their day, to not spend time doing low-level tasks like upgrading NIC firmware manually, patching, storage controllers or hypervisors, by hand. With Era, we're also giving time back to database administrators to say, what can we help you do to give you more time in your day to do things that matter to the organization and spend less time doing care and feeding and basic stuff. So that falls into a couple different buckets. One of which is provisioning, right? How fast can I stand up new database servers or put new databases on existing servers when I get requests to do so? How fast can I then scale those out when they need to grow or need more redundancy? And then also patching, right? How quickly and repeatably can I apply stuff like Oracle patches, SQL patches to my existing servers? That stuff mostly is a maintenance windows task still, but we can still make your maintenance windows get shorter, get smaller, and you can test them out during the week. So Tuesday at 10 a.m., you're testing SQL patches that will be applying Friday at 10 p.m. after hours. So we're making all that take less time, be more predictable, be more repeatable. And with 2.0, all of that becomes multi-cluster. So I actually did this last week, actually. We had our Global Tech Summit. We had every SE in the company, get into a bunker virtually for a couple of days, spend, some heads down time, doing some real great hands-on real world labs for the new features. We had every SE had an on-prem cluster and then also an AWS cloud cluster to get hands-on. We created a 3-instance availability group with SQL. So a sync rep copy, 2 databases in one cluster on-prem, and a 3rd copy up in the cloud. The provision in like 5 minutes. So it's really, really crazy fast, crazy automated to get that kind of database resiliency stood up.
So Jairo, I guess I'm an idiot here, and I was thinking Era, like Era. Era is the name of the product, right?
It is. Yep.
Now, is that something that Nutanix acquired along the way or built from the ground up by Nutanix?
Era is 100% homegrown, built from the ground up.
And so that goes to show a lot of what Nutanix is doing, right? Nutanix is, you got your traditional as in the last 5 years, hyper-converged play. But in addition to that, what Nutanix is really trying to do is add services to the portfolio that allow you to be a better IT shop, more efficient, and get some of these things done that typically would just add time and tasks to your day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so we're trying to solve for, if you need, multi-site databases with our application stood up, you can certainly build a bunch of VMs by hand from scratch, turn it over to your DBA, let him go to town and do all the installs. But it's like, well, kind of why bother, right? When we can automate the entire thing for you and give you the database that's stood up in a few minutes, give everyone in that chain more time in their day.
Right. Harvey, questions, thoughts on this?
I mean, I'm almost as bad as you on this one. I do a little bit with databases. I am not a DBA, but I mean, for me, I guess this goes into the category of one of those, great tricks and great value adds that Nutanix has that you have the ability to access just based on making the decision to run Nutanix and go down this path. I mean, for people who are not, very much in the weeds database administrators, and even for some who are, this tool set is like a huge deal. And to be able to just leverage it like this within the console is like, that's a big deal for me.
Hey, Jairo, how is Nutanix getting this in front of database folks, or is the hope just that the sysadmin people are leveraging it?
No, it's candidly, it's one of our newer motions, right? Is that within an account, try to meet the database owners, but also even like the line of business application owners, right? To talk about what powers your app. Is it Oracle on the back end, SQL on the back end? Is it something next gen like Postgres? And talk more about, hey, Nutanix is not just a platform for databases. It's actually a fantastic platform for databases, right? Why would you want to put your databases on us? Right. Well, guess what? They run faster. They experience less downtime. Yeah. They replicate more easily. They scale out better. Oh, and by the way, now we can do crazy, awesome data protection for them, right? So we can do actual snapshot retention on that storage to say if you need to roll back, to an hour ago on that database, or roll back to yesterday because you had an event, let's say, occur on that database,
Right.
or you need to take a production database and make a writable test dev copy of that. Well, in the old world, that would be like create new VM, backup and restore, and shift a bunch of data around on the cluster. With us, it's literally like take snapshot, mark snapshot as writable, mount it, done, right? You're talking about, we actually had a blog post conveniently today go live. Michael Webster, who's one of our performance architects, wrote about running 100 terabyte production Oracle database and refreshing 10 copies of it in 20 minutes. So if you had a 100 terabyte production database running your business, you said, I need not just one test dev copy, but I need 10 of them. And of course, over time, those are going to drift apart and differ as you get writes to the production database that the test dev copies are not getting. I need to catch up my 10 copies of that database.
Yep.
For us, that's a minute operation, right? 20 minutes, most of which is spent doing in-guest mounting, unmounting, and engine stop starting, not actual data shuffling. So videos up on YouTube, search for Nutanix era 100 terabyte database refresh.
And that web scale Webster.
Yep.
Web scale. Yeah. Hey, so you hit on something just now that I was going to ask you about. So in the early days of Nutanix, and maybe even still today, the VDI guys and the infrastructure guys, they started to buy into hyperconverge and Nutanix specifically. But those database guys, those were the ones that thought they had to have their legacy 3-tier big SAN architecture. Is part of this exactly what you just said a minute ago? It's a way to get to those guys and show them and prove to them that the software defined storage world is really where they fit.
I think that's pretty fair. I think it's even getting to a place where it shows them outcomes that we can deliver that you either almost can't achieve with 3-tier infrastructure, or you would need a lot of CLI automation that really isn't out of the box. Whereas what I'm describing here is like, well, you guys have seen it in person, right? Foundation takes about an hour. Prism Central takes 15 minutes beyond that. Era is a virtual appliance, takes, let's call it another 15 minutes. And you have a purpose-built, run your databases cluster, open and ready to automate and ready to do test dev copying, ready to deploy, multi-instance SQL AAG legs across clusters by lunch.
Yeah, I mean, this is like I said, it's a big deal to me. I mean, I've seen lots of DBAs who still to this day insist on staying away from 3-tier, but wanting their own dedicated physical hardware to run the databases and the machines against. And this is a way to kind of accomplish that, but at a much bigger scale with the performance to match it. I mean, this is a big deal that I think that people should be looking at for sure. It's a great way to run databases. It's a great way to have more flexibility than you have now, and just to be able to do things like you called off, Jaira, with let's talk about 100 terabyte databases. I mean, just to have that conversation, not just to have all the extra features with it, but just to have that conversation is a game changer.
I mean, I think the why is always meaningful, right? So we're trying to offer outcomes for IT teams with, let's say, private cloud and hybrid cloud infrastructure, because we do this for public cloud too now with our clusters offering. Right. Offering outcomes that you could go get in full public cloud, right? Swipe credit card, receive database, make API call, snapshot database or replicate database, but giving you better cost control, offering better performance, bringing that capability on-prem back to where your other data sits, giving you more control over what the shape of that cloud needs to be in its hybrid state. But without making you go back and relearn, like the reason you'd never give a dedicated SAN, dedicated blade chassis to your DBA team is because they don't want to be virtual infrastructure admins, right? They don't want to have to go learn about like FC zoning and all that good stuff. With HCI, the proposition of saying, well, this is going to be our dedicated SQL cluster, and it's actually not that hard to administer and patch and health check and monitor. the virtual layers is really, really easy and very, very doable, right? Because your DBAs are expensive, right? They're very smart guys. They don't want to be virtual admins. They want to run their databases. When the infrastructure becomes self-driving, giving them their own little SQL cluster, Oracle cluster, or even a purpose-built database cluster, right? This just runs Postgres or MySQL or whatever your business runs on, becomes very, very doable.
So, Jairo, let's go back to the blog here. The next section's what's new, and it says multi-cluster and public cloud support. I think you were just hitting on that a minute ago. Let's make sure we cover the content that's in here specifically. How do you want to cover this?
So with 2.0, Era goes multi-cluster, meaning that it's now it's as easy as telling it's in a little click-through wizard how many instances of an availability group do you want to run, and which ones are going to be sync rep, which ones will be an async replication, and you can say I want 2 here and I want 1 over there for local HA or a remote kind of DR option, all provisioned automatically, whether that's an on-prem cluster, a cloud cluster, or both.
So, Jairo, I guess I got to stop this real quick. I don't understand what Era really is. It's storage for various different databases, but it doesn't really replace the database. It just creates a platform that's better for those databases. Is that right?
It's a database provisioning, automation tool, and data management automation tool. How's that? Jira's words there, but that's how I would describe it. We're not becoming your database. You're still going to run SQL. You're still going to run Oracle, whatever the engine you've chosen is. We can help you deploy the VMs and install the engine, right? The SQL, the Oracle, the Postgres, the MySQL inside of that faster, right? So you just push button, receive new database server, receive new database on an existing server, whatever you want. So we're not in the data plane, right? We're not controlling your transactions. That goes to the engine you picked, but you get those SQL VMs, you get those Oracle VMs spun up faster. Or when you need a new database on an existing server, that's like a button click or API call or CLI command away from being deployed for you automatically.
Now, are these Linux VMs, Windows VMs, or does it matter?
Your choice. Yeah. SQL almost always on Windows, Oracle almost always on Linux.
And by SQL, you mean
and
Microsoft SQL, but MySQL can easily be on Linux, right?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, even for, to steal some thunder from one of the later bullets here of the post, so we even announced support for Postgres. So Postgres is a next-gen database. A lot of customers commonly are looking at it for an Oracle to something else migration target. It's an open source database, just like MySQL, like MariaDB. The advantage with Postgres is when you've deployed it with Era, you can even get support for that software for Postgres itself through Nutanix. So Nutanix offers, of course, hardware support if you buy our NX nodes, our hypervisor, our AOS storage, the controller itself. But now we can even move that up the stack into we can support your database as well, which, by the way, is open source and no license to scale out when you deploy it with Era as well. We know that that's an easy lift on our part because Era makes the deployment easy and makes sure that it's deployed out of the gate from day one with best practices. So we're not going to get a lot of calls from you about performance or scaling or whatnot. Era makes all that easy and foolproof.
Well, you're starting to talk me into being a DBA, but I just don't think I'm smart enough. But this definitely
because it won't take a lot of your time out of the day. All right, if you do it with Era, it's easy.
It'll make me look good.
Yeah.
All right. Did we cover the multi-cloud and public cloud support well enough? Harvey, any thoughts on that piece?
Nothing extra. I mean, I think we did cover that well. Just again, this just continues to paint the picture of flexibility with Nutanix.
Yeah. Jairo, was there more to add on that? I'm sorry if I cut you off short.
In a nutshell, since Era is now multi-cluster, that can be multiple clusters on-prem, can be a cluster on-prem and a cluster in the cloud. Choose your own adventure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next exciting topic here, and I'd say that, but I really do mean it. And I'm sure Nutanix is, because of the secret sauce of Nutanix, I'm sure this actually goes a long way quickly. I think you were alluding to that a while ago, and that's data protection. Help us understand what we're covering here in this portion of the blog.
Yeah. So even with the launch of Era 1.0, data protection was part of it, right? If I have a running database on a running server, I want to keep snapshots of that around on Nutanix storage for easy accessibility. And what can I do with that? How can I use that for provisioning? We'll get to all of that. But initially, that offering talked to basically just one VM and one instance of it at a time. With this, Era's gotten a lot smarter. Talks to Oracle RAC, talks to SQL Server availability groups, can talk to multiple VMs that all partner together to run databases as a scale-out fashion. And we can now, snapshot those things together and orchestrate even recovery, right? So if I want to fail over my database from on-prem to, say, an availability group copy up in the cloud, that's something I can now do with Era. And if I have to do like a rollback, as I fail over, again, all easy. Even log management, right? So how do I roll back, down to the second to get to the level of availability that I need.
Hey, Harvey, I just learned a valuable trick. If when Jarvis stops, if I take a sip of coffee and give him that piece, he'll start going again. No, that's great, really. Harvey, any comments or things to add here? I mean, obviously, this is where Nutanix just shines, really.
It is. It's just additional functionality, and the ability to do these things with ease. I mean, it'll take you and me that are not a DBA and make us just look like we know every little piece of it.
Well, I will say this. I used to say all the time when I would do my Citrix presentations that it's all about the app. And finally, one day somebody said, when I did my normal, hey, what's the most important thing? And it's the app. It's the app. But somebody said to me one time, it's the data. And I'm like, well, they kind of go hand in hand. And this is a great example of why it's important to be effective and efficient and handle the data portion. And where Nutanix sees that as a key to being an enterprise player in this space.
I think it's fair to say, right, that the best way to run an application in production is to also run a copy of it in dev. And the more your dev environment looks like production, the smoother that will go for you, or the more you're going to catch in dev before it rolls into production. Yeah. And that ability to say, with whatever your choice, whatever your flavor is, right, a GUI button, a CLI call, or an API call, clone my production and give me a dev environment that is 100% match, that just sets you up for more and more success.
So Jaira, the next section here is database server patching. How does Era 2.0 help there?
So the Oracle out of the box, Era out of the box did Oracle patching. With 2.0, it extends to also do patching for SQL Server and for Postgres. The advantage there is pretty easy to understand. Like, most companies tell us that stuff like patching Oracle is not a sure thing, not a guaranteed outcome. It's kind of a Russian roulette. Like, let's try this patch. Oh, nope, we're going to roll back kind of premise. We want to make that simpler, make that more of a guaranteed outcome. And one way to get that is by testing, right? So when I can clone a server, Tuesday morning, try test a patch on that and know is it going to succeed or fail, and then tell it, okay, put this patch in the hopper and 10 p.m. on Friday, I want you to apply that for me. That's a pretty simple value prop for customers to say that's going to be a better way of doing things than we do it right now.
Absolutely. Just, again, adding that flexibility of being able to be predictable, being able to have things that you can replicate across your environment. I mean, these are all things that will help you, keep your uptime high and keep your hair on your head.
And the human cost, right? Like, most companies don't run one database; they run a couple dozen or a couple hundred, right? And the more critical the database, the more copies you run. Sometimes 12, 15 copies of that database for the right kind of test, dev, production chain in the environment. Every single one of these things can be put in the pipeline and say, patch this and then patch that. So we're talking about some serious man hours that we're saving there, serious predictability and outcomes that we're driving towards. It gets pretty meaningful pretty fast.
I paused for a minute there because, of course, I've had plenty of experience patching servers in my career, but I've never been the database guy to patch the database engines. That sounds really scary for a corporate app that's super high profile, super real time. Obviously you have backups, but this is just another way to do it better, to make sure you don't have to go to those backups, or if you do, that they're there and available.
I think it's fair, right? Like, you shouldn't be learning about, is this patch going to work for me, the first time you try it on a production instance, right? Like, let's find out sooner. Let's put some more tripwires out earlier to get that data.
Well, and that's the big thing too, is, when you have the ability to do this, by the time you're patching production, you already know what the outcome is. And to be able to have that, comfort is I'd say, that's just a big deal to me. Being able to go into something and know what the outcome's going to be, and not just that, be able to, make your test environment, test the updates, and do all of that during the day while it can't hurt anybody. And then all of a sudden, you still schedule your downtime if you want to schedule the downtime to do production, but you already know the outcome. You've already seen this. You already, have honed your process down to being exactly what you want it to be.
Yeah, you've already tested on, non-impactful 0-byte clones of production. But then also think about getting the outcome of getting to wrangle all the versions, right? I'm sure we can think of customers that have dozens of versions of SQL running in their environment. When I can catalog all of those things and say, this is my baseline, this is a preferred version, this is an allowed version, this is a non-preferred version, this is a deprecated version, and map every instance in my environment to that kind of categorization, I can say, what do I need to focus my time on? Let's get these patched. They're old and dusty and rusty. Let's focus on those first.
Right.
So, Jaira, next section here talks about support for SAP HANA at scale. I got to admit, I have some reactions when I even say the 3 letters SAP based on experience and something else I'm dealing with in my work world. But SAP and HANA, tell me what it is you guys are doing there that makes it different.
So we were proud to be the first HCI platform certified for HANA workloads by SAP. We keep guys embedded with those with the HANA team, with the SAP team 24/7. And so we're proud to bring the benefits of Era to HANA. Before this release, we didn't support HANA as a engine for provisioning, for copy data management, for patching. Patching might, I think, is still to come, but for provisioning and for copy data management. So HANA joins the family of other databases that we can automate through Era.
Yeah, those SAP databases, they're pretty small, right?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, and probably inexpensive too.
Yeah,
right.
Well, I think
the blurbs I've heard about those kind of projects they're like a decade worth of forecasting from terms of like planning, acquisition, testing, rollout. It's you have whole other teams that might be administering them by the time they go into production.
I'll tell you my SAP story, somewhat related to what you just talked about. I worked for a Fortune 500 headquartered here out of Charlotte. And one of the reasons I'm a Citrix guy today, and I went back to my Citrix roots, is because I saw them sending a team of like 20 people to 90 different locations across the company to roll out SAP. And I'm going, guys, why don't we just use Citrix for this? And they said, oh, you can't. Citrix is too expensive. I'm like, you had multiple years of sending 20 people, 90 different locations. It was 90 different locations, 30 different business units. And you're telling me Citrix is too expensive? Like, you're crazy.
Wow.
I guess they eventually got it rolled out and then got acquired by somebody else. And it was all probably a moot point at that point, at some point anyway. I'd like to go back and find out. But. Okay, 24/7 support for Postgres SQL with Nutanix Era. Jaira, you pretty much covered that one earlier. Anything else that you wanted to add there?
No, I think we covered it, right? Like, why not get Nutanix supporting your databases as well, right? When we've got the best support in the industry.
Yeah. And then this last section, fully managed database as a service solution with HCL Technologies. What is that?
Talks about how we've got some of our larger GSIs rolling out solutions to their customers powered by Era, right? It's really a validation, right, of at scale of the operational readiness to say, when we have companies that are basically saying, we now offer database as a service to our customers based on this entire stack of technology, it's a bit of a pedigree, right?
I believe after I read that, I realized that's one of my competitors.
I was surprised you went there, but hey, let's do it.
So just take that away. I'm not gonna take the time to edit it.
Edit marker.
Well, I've been told by them that they're a much better Citrix partner than us. So maybe I don't know. No,
Wow.
actually they don't. They've got a ton.
Hold on, I'm just going to take a note about that.
They've got a ton of Citrix clients under management, so hard to compete with that. But I'll put Harvey up against them any day.
That's right. And for now, I will just remain quiet until that time comes.
That's for Nutanix and Citrix for that matter, and other things too.
There we go. Take note.
Well, guys, the last section here is how to try it out. Jairo, you wanna put on your sales guy hat and help us understand that piece?
I mean, as usual, honestly, it's more of a techie hat, but it's my trope at this point, right? So like all of our software, pretty much you can try it out in test drive, which is, I think, the coolest thing. Like, yes, of course you can build home labs, and yes, it's fully functional and all that good stuff. But that ability to say, look, I just have a quick question. Show me a running environment that I can go beat on and click in and provision stuff, I think is the coolest stuff. So yeah, Era is they're in test drive. You get into it in seconds and look at a real running instance.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Jairo, that's the end of the blog. There was another link that we had in the invite. Do we want to cover that too? Let me pull it back up here.
So then I think as we've kind of proven out on this conversation, it's a lot to take in. It touches everything and it can affect a lot of long-running processes within the organization, right? Let's put it that way.
Right.
And so this is just a quick sidebar that we do. We run some workshops that help everyone within the organization, right? Whether it's the DBA or the virtual infrastructure guy, application owner, right? Line of business owner, understand like, what can Era do for me? Whether it's, be able to recover faster or provision faster, clone across availability zones. What does a migration look like? How do I rethink what I'm doing to take advantage of these new outcomes? So we have a couple different, as always, kind of tailored offerings to help everybody get up to speed and sing from one songbook together.
Yeah. So it looks like there's two versions of this. This is as a service software only, right?
Yeah, we call these I call them our Era workshops. Yeah, design and migration planning workshops. Yep.
Oh, these are the link I'm looking at had a starter and a pro. Is that the product options or is that?
That's our new branding for the workshops themselves.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, great. If anybody's looking to get ramped up, that's probably the best way to do it without a doubt, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, Jairo, thanks again for joining us as always. And I know you and Harvey and even myself, we're trying to get our calendar filled out for the next couple of weeks of Nutanix related podcasts. So more to come, but I appreciate you guys jumping on today and talking about Era 2.0 and what Nutanix is doing there.
Absolutely. I love all of our products, but I think Era is one of the coolest examples of like sort of going up the stack and offering more transformation at a higher level faster than just about anything else we do.
Cool. Harvey, anything else you want to bring up before we adjourn for this podcast?
I don't have anything, believe it or not, this time.
You're just happy to get out and get going to the airport, right?
Oh, yeah. You could say that.
Yeah. I miss going places. I guess I'm about a month or two away, but it'll be back to my every other week normal, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely excited to be able to help out, be able to help map some processes and, move forward and help another customer get further to their destination from where they are now. But yeah, travel right now is always funny.
and that's a big healthcare organization that's at some phase in the future planning to implement Nutanix, at least for their Citrix environment, right?
That is correct. And I'm sure they will be looking at Era as well, taking another look at it to help with that. So I'm sure workshops will be in the future there too.
Yeah. Well, guys, I appreciate you joining, and we'll do it again, I guess, next week.
All right.
Talk to you then.